Hello, good morning, good day to you. How you guys doing? Hope you have a good one. Yeah, have a pleasant day myself. I'm about to show you a video, and I'm gonna gear this. It's gonna be a social. This is social video. Uh, a so a social community video, and this is for Black people. And it's a teachable video I'm about to show you. It's gonna come from Black people. You, what I'm about to show you is what coded racism is. Coded. This guy's gonna show you. Shout out to this video.
One thing that's seldom talked about but often happens is what I call the cult of nice white supremacy, or I guess we can also call it nice supremacy. Either way, I want to dive deep into this topic. I'm your host, Cool Colas, and you are now tuning into a new video on my channel. So let's get into it. I've said it before and I'll say it again. Most of the racism that you are going to experience as a Black person in 2025 is going to be via covert racism. The days of having racism where you're called a hard ER or you have the KKK or Nazis are pretty much an anomaly. It's something that you typically are just not going to see as much as these little covert, passive-aggressive nitpicks. But I want to get in specifically to the topic of nice white supremacy due to a post that I saw on Threads recently where this sister basically mentioned that you can be nice and still be racist. And I want to dive deep into that. We call this type of white supremacy nice white supremacy because it doesn't have the look of being rude, disrespectful, degrading, or aggressive on its face. This type of white supremacy is actually quite polite, and we need to specifically talk about the people who exhibit these types of traits. But before I get into that, I want to talk about what people typically know to be true when it comes to covert racism, and when we also talk about this concept of nice white supremacy or nice supremacy. Most of the time, when people think about overt racism versus covert racism, they attribute overt racism to the Republicans and the conservatives and those who are alt-right, and they attribute covert white supremacy to liberals, white liberals that is. But I'm going to have to burst that bubble just for a quick second. Although a lot of you all believe that covert white supremacy is mostly done by liberals, Democrats, etc. who are white, most of the time covert white supremacy is actually via these moderate suspected white supremacists and then these conservative suspected white supremacists as well. And a lot of them act like this because they're on code with white supremacy and what they have to do to be able to still uphold those values while also not being outed. And when I say that they are on code with each other, what I mean is that they know that this is a system that is intangible but still very much real. And what I mean by that is they practice it in common law. There's no manifesto that you can open and then say, rule number 1 of white supremacy is that I'm going to eat out of a jar of mayonnaise. Rule number 2 is that I'm going to oppress a bunch of Black people. It doesn't work like that. They just practice it in common law. It's something that they just tend to just kind of do. And I noticed the far uprise of these nice white supremacists, especially post Charlie Kirk's death. Now, a lot of them are kind of coming into a lot of these social media spaces and trying to have banter with a lot of different Black platforms. Even if you look at, for example, Tariq Nasheed's platform, he has a lot of suspected white supremacists that come on his platform all the damn time. And there's a certain behavior that they have when they come on. It's almost like they're like kind of timid even when they come on. They're timid, they're kind of stuttering and shaking and stumbling over their words and not really sure what to say when, and they are apologizing every 5 seconds before they say something that is low-key passive-aggressive. So they have this type of mentality or behavior where they're afraid to almost speak their minds because they know how they feel, right? But they're kind of tiptoeing around telling you exactly how they feel. A lot of them may present themselves as being polite, and I guess we can call their asses the polite whites. But
Oh boy.
Attention network marketers. I have spent the past decade literally mentoring hundreds of...
Let me comment right here. This guy is right on point. I have gone throughout my whole life, dealing with people who are like this, and it's so indirect, and sometimes they don't even know when they're being offensive. I mean, they haven't a clue, because in their environment, they're just now coming out of their white environment, so to speak, and everything around them, every time their view is from a lens of a TV, because where they live, and most of the people who they attempt, like in black and Hispanic and other societies, everybody's used to being what they're used to seeing on an equal eye basis. And even though they want to look at it as everyone is equal eye basis, we see it kind of settled out in a way. They try to want to say that I see all God's people as human, but technically it's a process. Neely Fuller says that, the late Neely Fuller says something, and he said, white men ask those who know Neely Fuller, he said something powerful. He said, Mr. Fuller, how do I suspect that I'm a white supremacist? He says, not for you to understand. It's for me to understand, to see what you are as far as a white supremacist. And what he is saying is accurate, because sometimes it's taught and it's so subtle in coming out. And sometimes they don't think we catch it, because black people are supposed to be in their eyes, supposed to be mentally slow. This is the truth. So this is the truth right here. And they don't think that, even though you're a grown human being, even though that you are, but there are some, and this is what I call the direct and
entrepreneurs, helping them unlock
whites. But what they really do is they try to tiptoe around what they really want to say. So they'll try to cover it up initially by, again, seeming that they're trying to make it seem like they're harmless, that they're shy, that they're afraid to speak their opinions, they're afraid to be outed, they're not trying to offend anybody, and then they low-key say something offensive. Or what they may do is they may try to say something offensive very quickly, and then they start rattling off a bunch of shit, changing subjects about 8 and 9 and 10 times. That way you don't realize that they just said some passive-aggressive ass shit that's actually racist. So they like to do little things like that. They don't like to directly come at you and say, you're a hardy yard. They like to kind of throw in some shit real quick and try to make it seem like you didn't hear that, but they're literally disrespecting you to your face. But they can't really do it in a way where they're standing on business. The thing about these nice white supremacists is that they'll be some of the sweetest people that you will ever meet, but they are some of the most racist people that you will ever meet as well too. So they'll do a lot of things probably while you're not even looking that are actually blatantly racist, but they will not do it to your face, because a lot of them can't stand on business like grown-ass men and tell you exactly who the fuck they are. And they can't also stand on business as women too, because women do this as well. It's not just men. But regardless, my point is that a lot of these suspected white supremacists are doing this because they're trying to create the facade that they're harmless, or even an aid and an ally to black people. But at the same time, they also have a very passive-aggressive vitriol towards black people. That's why they behave in the way that they do. So a lot of them will try to act like they're your friend, but then will, again, have a very passive-aggressive attitude at the same time. And you don't just have nice white supremacists. You also have what I would call kind white supremacists. Because I know that famous saying that everybody loves to say that actually annoys the hell out of me. And this is an unpopular opinion, by the way. Y'all probably are not going to like that I'm going to say this, but I'm going to say it anyway, because you'll be the fuck all right. But I hate that saying. I'm not a nice person. I'm a kind person. I hear people say this shit over and over again. Let me tell you something. The reason why I don't like this saying is because I smell deceit and I smell bullshit. Most of the people who are saying this aren't even kind people. or even worse, kind moments.
Yeah.
And they often claim the title of being kind because they believe that if they do a kind thing here or there, it's going to balance out their bullshit. And when it comes to the white supremacists, they're 10 times worse. They believe that if they do a kind thing here or they appear kind there, whatever the case is, it's going to balance out their racist asses and their racist ass mentalities. So a lot of times they'll do kind things for black people. I mean, they'll bring you a little fried chicken dinner, you know what I'm saying? They'll do little favors for you. And then they'll especially go around and try to make it seem like they're the greatest person on earth because they cater to some damn dogs. I mean, think about the way that they just go way out of their way for dogs. I mean, it's just like a weird obsession. But they can have all this kindness and care and gentleness and nuance and all this other shit when it comes to a damn dog. But when it comes to the rights for black people, they just turn a blind eye. I mean, they literally turn into the most hellish, the most disrespectful, hateful, vitriolic demons that you've ever seen alive. But again, let something happen to a damn dog and they're just gonna raise hell. It's gonna be like, oh, how dare you? How dare you do something to an innocent pup? You know, it's just, it just kills me. I'm like, you fools are sitting there tripping about a damn dog, but then when it comes to the lives of black people, the atonement of the treatment that's been done to black people, all of a sudden you don't give any types of fucks. Matter of fact, you will double down on the disrespect, the hatred, and oppression that we actually suffer. Meanwhile, you're over there worried about Fido and the fact that you can't have him up in your kitchen and touching him and shit while you cooking food. My point here is that there's a difference between a nice white supremacist and a kind white supremacist. A nice white supremacist is someone who is just trying to be polite and position themselves as someone who is either a friend, a buddy, or an ally to black people, and they're trying to exemplify it in their behavior before they actually say something that is racist. And someone who is a kind white supremacist is trying to do actual acts for black people, and they'll be minor acts and whatnot, but they'll do acts for black people to prove that they're not racist, but then still have racist ideals and ideologies. But again, it goes back to this nice versus kind bullshit where they think that their kindness is balancing out their male supremacy. These damn suspected white supremacists are very easy to identify. They're the type where if a white person says, I hate black people, and then a black person says, well, fuck you then, they're the type to say, can't we all just get along, dude? For those of you all who are trying to figure out what a nice white supremacist really looks like, it's very, very easy to see. But if you don't believe me, even from the description I just gave, here are a couple different things that you can do. And I call it a two-stage process or a two-step process, however you want to say it. And these are the two questions that you can ask a nice or kind white supremacist to out them as a full-blown white supremacist or at the very least a suspected white supremacist. First question that you can ask them is,
I'm hosting a 3-day financial services and life insurance workshop. You definitely want to be.
Did you believe that George Floyd died of fentanyl or by a knee to the neck because of Derek Chauvin? That's the first question you can ask them. If they say anything but he was murdered by police brutality because of this race soldier and his heinous racist act, then they've already failed and they've proven to you that they are indeed a suspected white supremacist. But again, don't stop there. That's just one question. I said it's a two-step or a two-stage process. The second question that you can ask them, the second question, and this tells you if they're also a suspected white supremacist, and that's, do you believe that foundational black Americans deserve reparations? Matter of fact, you can just ask them, do you believe that black people deserve reparations at all? And see their answer. If they're talking about some, how is that ever going to happen? I don't believe that's fair, this and that. They get to explaining and babbling and I'm white and I say so, and then that gives you your answer there as well too. To keep it real, even if they pass these two, they still could be racist. I'm just giving you a way to show that there is a clear sign that this person is racist, because there's a lot of you all who are going out there and you're hunting. Is this white person racist? Is this white person racist? Is this white person racist? Who's racist? Is that person racist? Oh my God, that person's racist. There's a lot of you all who are trying to cherry pick which white person is racist and which white person isn't. The reality is I shouldn't even be coddling your ass, because this is the thing that you need to understand about the dominant society. Any white person can actually exhibit racism. Some may choose not to. Some may choose not to show you it. Not meaning that they're not racist, but just they choose not to show you it. But you need to understand that any white person has the potential to be racist if they choose to use it. So you seeing a white person being racist at this point in 2025 should not be a shock.
And he's absolutely right. You know, I had to let go of someone who I thought was a friend recently, you know, and I kind of ignored certain things. And I really had to really end my friendship permanently with this person. And it was not because the issue it was similar to an issue like this, but it was something on totally different. And this person I traveled with, but I had to cut ties, you know, because I found like myself in life, I think that's, you know, and I kind of have mercy on some young black men, young black women, because they don't know until time will have to show you what this brother just said. You have to see it over time. When you've been around enough of any group of people, you learn their ways. You learn their actions. You watch, you observe how the way they move, how uncomfortable, certain things that they do when it's more of you. But sometimes when it's just one of you, the real side of them come out.
Prices are doubling. So how will your retirement fund last the 30 years you thought it would? You need...
Well, I guess it's buffering.
Now, where were we? Picking right on up where we left off. Going into the next book. The next book is called White Flight, Atlanta and the Making of Modern Conservatism by Dr. Kevin Kruse, who is a professor of history at Princeton University. Now, this next book is important because it picks up from where we left off in 1945 with Black Metropolis. And it brings us smoothly into the Civil Rights era, which was a major pivotal point for America in general. Now, White Flight is a great book to segue into this era because it places us directly into the scene with a lot of first-hand accounts. And it does something that most books on this topic don't do, which is provide the perspectives of both the blacks and the whites, who in most instances stood for opposing causes. So we get a chance to see why both of them did what they did and acted the way they acted. Okay? Now, surprisingly, Atlanta was a city that projected itself as progressive for nearly 2 decades prior to the 1960s Civil Rights era. They presented to the world an image of blacks and whites coexisting in peace, getting along together, and progressing economically. So much so that William Hartsfield thought it necessary to coin the phrase Atlanta, the city too busy to hate. And apparently that was the case as long as Negroes remained in their place and played by the rules. Now when Negroes did otherwise, then inconsistencies in that motto began to show up. For example, as we open up the book, Dr. Kruse in his introduction details an occasion that took place in Peyton Forest. And this is where some blacks were leaving the black area to move to the white Peyton Forest neighborhood. And whites resisted. Indeed, by the end of July 1963, all but 15 white families had sold their homes to black buyers and abandoned the neighborhood, which has been the typical response by whites when Negroes moved too close. And it was a required response for many of them if they wanted to maintain their superiority story. It's hard to keep the narrative alive if people that they're supposed to be superior to live right next to them and have access to the same things. So a distance had to be created. One way they maintained that distance was to move out of the neighborhood when Negroes arrived. They were not simply fleeing Peyton Forest, Copeland pointed out, but the city itself.
We are trying to find some area outside the city limits where we can buy homes and get away from the problem
of desegregation, he noted.
Everybody I know is definitely leaving the city of Atlanta.
The problem in their mind was that they didn't want to live around Negroes. They genuinely did not want to do that. When you understand their mentality from their perspective, living next to Negroes was a major breach to the social code imagined by them. For a white to say that they lived in a black or colored neighborhood, that was perceived as a major downgrade and an unfortunate situation. So when blacks moved in, that very movement created an external pressure that interacted with the beliefs and values that made up the original white consciousness. And the pressure from that situation had a highly influential effect on their decision to leave. It didn't cause them to leave, but it had enough impact to make the decision to leave more appealing than staying. The Peyton Wall incident, as famous as it was fleeting, was only the most public eruption of the much larger phenomenon of white flight. That year alone, the beleaguered mayor noted, City Hall had been confronted with 52 separate cases of racial transition, incidents in which whites fled from neighborhoods as blacks bought homes there. So this was a widespread repeating pattern. And it's important to know that it wasn't just Atlanta that this happened in. It happened in every major city where this black and white dynamic occurred. And what this shows us is that we're dealing with a mental entity. A mental entity that emerged inside the physical vessel and is constructed uniformly based on similar beliefs, stories, and values that interact and intertwine in such a way to create this self-preserving entity which reacts similarly across the board all around the United States. Because it's not as if all the whites got together in some football huddle and made some grand plan to move from the city into the suburbs once blacks arrived. That's not what happened. That same psychic organism emerged within each of them, and it influenced them to act in similar ways, regardless if they were in Los Angeles, Detroit, Chicago, or Atlanta. And although the information never appeared in Atlanta's positive press coverage, a steady stream of white flight had in fact been underway for nearly a decade. During the 5 years before the 1962 Peyton Forest Panic, for instance, nearly 30,000 whites had abandoned the city. They weren't playing games. We know that moving for most people is perceived as an inconvenience because it takes a lot of resources and a lot of planning, which means the reason for moving has to outweigh the comfort of staying. For many whites to leave the city, it shows us that blacks moving into the area was a strong enough reason for them to make a move. So this here was not a joke at all. They really believed in being separate from blacks at all costs. It was a top priority in their mental worldview. Afterward, the numbers only grew larger. In 1960, the total white population of Atlanta stood at barely more than 300,000. Over the course of that decade, roughly 60,000 whites fled from Atlanta. During the 1970s, another 100,000 would leave as well. Uh-oh. The city too busy to hate, the skeptics noted, had become the city too busy moving to hate. It's getting good. While many have assumed that white flight was little more than a literal movement of the white population, this book argues that it represented a much more important transformation in the political ideology of those involved. Remember I told you about that mental organism? Well, it has a drive to survive. And in doing so, it can influence the person to adjust in order to protect it. That's the transformation of political ideology Dr. Cruz is talking about here. The whites would eventually change their language and their approach, and they would do it in such a way to conceal the white supremacy instead of plainly voicing it out as they had done previously. That was the adjustment made for that mental entity to keep itself alive. Because ideas, just like biological organisms, display this self-preserving tendency. Because of their confrontation with the civil rights movement, white Southern conservatives were forced to abandon their traditional, populist, and often starkly racist demagoguery and instead craft a new conservatism predicated on a language of rights, freedoms, and individualism. You hear that? Now, why did they have to abandon the old ways of being blunt and direct about their prejudice? Because the times had changed. If they would have continued voicing it in the old way, then they would have appeared to the rest of the world as people stuck in the past. So, to preserve their self-image and at the same time produce the same intended effect, they simply changed the way they spoke, which concealed the real intent. It's like a cover, a blanket. So on the surface, it was presented as rights, freedoms, and individualism, but beneath the surface, under the cover, it was preserving white over black hierarchy, keeping Negroes in their place, and maintaining the power structure. This modern conservatism proved to be both subtler and stronger than the politics that preceded it, and helped Southern conservatives dominate the Republican Party, and through it, national politics as well. White flight in the end was more than a physical relocation. It was a political revolution. Come on with it. This study, however, argues that white resistance to desegregation was never as immobile or monolithic as its practitioners and chroniclers would have us believe. Indeed, segregationists could be incredibly innovative in the strategies and tactics they used to confront the civil rights movement. That's the adjustments and pivots they made, which was necessary because the civil rights movement gave a body to an opposing consciousness emerging within the human psyche. So, to deal with it, the white supremacy consciousness had to adjust, lest it be utterly wiped off the face of the earth. In recent work on the late 19th and early 20th century South, several historians have argued that the system of racial segregation was never a fixed entity, but rather a fluid relationship in which blacks and whites constantly adjusted to meet changing circumstances. If the Southern system of racial subjugation is understood as responsive to change during its era of dominance, it naturally follows that segregationist ideology and strategy did not remain inert when the system confronted, in the form of the civil rights movement, a threat to its very existence. That's what we...
Let me stop right here. It's not just the South have gone through this. It's throughout the United States. This is just a pigment of what it was, because no matter if you go to any part of the United States, whether it's the West Coast, it probably had the same program. Whether it was the Northeast, Upper Midwest, Lower Midwest, it went through the whole scenario. This is, but this is just, but he's just telling it from this point of view, and that's how the code they put in terms in different parts of the country when it comes to black and white. Not even being together, and we hide up under Christianity.
Parents in Mechanicsburg say their children came home from a Halloween parade with more than just candy. They found business cards linked to the Ku Klux Klan. The discovery sparked outrage online and led one TikTok creator's post to go viral, inspiring dozens of people to pack a Mechanicsburg Borough Council meeting demanding action. Fox 43's Sydney Nauman shows us how a social media post turned into a public stand against hate.
It started the way most Halloween stories do, with candy buckets and costumes. But what some Mechanicsburg parents say they found inside wasn't sweet. KKK cards from Women's of KKK passed around in our Halloween parade in Mechanicsburg. Business cards promoting the women of the Ku Klux Klan. This is not the first time that KKK posters have been posted around in Mechanicsburg. But Doyle didn't stay silent. She picked up her phone, hit record, and hit a nerve. Because the KKK just walked through our Halloween parade. Her TikTok post spread to millions of screens, then into this borough meeting. I was able to fill up a whole room at my town council meeting, and we're able to make changes in our town today, where we live today. We're squashing this today. The Mechanicsburg Borough Council and Mayor condemned the distribution, even though police say no laws were broken.
We want to state clearly and without reservation that any message or organization promoting racism, intimidation, or discrimination stands in direct opposition to the values of our community.
The Women's Auxiliary of the Ku Klux Klan shared this statement with me regarding the alleged distribution to children. That's not who we are. Children are precious and not to be used as pawns. Not saying cards weren't passed out from our Carlisle and Lancaster Auxiliary in the local area, but not in that way. This is misinformation. It's not illegal to belong to the women of the KKK, and it is our right to distribute. Our mission is to help support our family, our community, and our beloved country. The council reminded community members of the rights extending to all citizens.
There is a First Amendment right to freedom of speech and freedom of association.
Ooh, they tell you racism is over, huh? They tell you racism is over. Oh boy, they put directly in your indirect, and this is the indirect that white people do. They do it with boldness. We don't see it there's a problem. This is what the young man was telling you about. This is what the other video was telling you about. And they really think that we have we don't have an understanding of what's going on. You can do circles and do this around different people, but don't be so direct with it. Just put it in children. Just put it among a play. It's not that bad. You see? But when we raise this up, oh my goodness, you're being racist. You're being racist for pointing these actions out towards us. Now you see why some black people feel the way we do? Now you see why? To the one, sometimes you have to look at it from this perspective. But yeah. And this is I'm about to get to an interesting video after this. I'm going to show you something that we got to address this. You know, we got to talk. Now I'm going back to black people. And this black man made a good point. Hold on. I'm going to show you this video, man. You're going to trip out. Because they really don't understand what's going on, man. They really don't understand. Some people, and you know, some people really don't know. They don't understand the level of racism. They don't know. It cheats. What does racism transform? They're trying to transform it, brothers and sisters. They're trying to go into hiding with it. They're trying to go into now. Now they're being outed out. With this. I'm going to show you what,
Now, I don't know if y'all noticed this or not, man, but the volume on the racist rhetoric, anti-black rhetoric, has been turned up a few notches. And I'm going to say this. It's due in large part to our own people. People like the ones we're going to react to in this video, Cartier family, who act as echo chambers and I guess as outlets for some of these people to express their opinions without having to say it themselves, right? But not only that, it's giving people like Nick Fuentes a opportunity to really just jump in and fill the void unashamedly. And then it allows all of those who are like-minded to continue to voice it. And we seen this, I don't know if some of y'all noticed, but there was a bunch of videos over the over the Halloween holiday, where people was doing blackface there was a bunch going on about that, man. I don't think I ever got to that video, but it was all over X and everything, and it's just getting out of hand. And now you got Kanye West, who did this video apologizing to the Jews for what he said. Okay, that's one thing, but what about all the anti-black rhetoric that he spewed, all the things that are offensive to his own people? What black leader has he gone to and apologized? And even if he is trying to say it's his missile. So with all of these things happening, we really got to be on point right now, and also unforgiving for those who are not only talking like this, but acting as either echo chambers, conduits, whatever you want to say, allowing these people to speak vicariously through them, however you want to put it. Act unforgiving. All this forgiving people and black people, that shit should be over with, man. We gotta be just like every other race of people who, when these things happen, demand that something either be done, however you want to put it. But all this forgiving stuff gotta come to an end. Now, having said that, I'm gonna get into this video by Jew Almighty, and we're gonna look at this, man, because what these guys is doing, honestly, goes beyond just reacting to a video to me. It's at this point, money can't be that important, bro. Money can't be that important. But
The police don't want you to know this, but the reason we always ask for your insurance
at this point, money can't be that important, bro. Money can't be that important. But let's go.
One white and going hardest. We are witnessing MAGA implode right before our eyes. I will not vote for Republicans. I will not deliver my audience to vote for Republicans if Republicans don't put America first. At this point, it's like a political Royal Rumble, and Nick Fuentes has smoke for everybody. It's getting squeezed. Because the Groypers are on the one hand saying, hey, listen, fat boy, we want America first. You want to run for president? We want to hear you say America first. So he doesn't want to condemn the Groypers.
An avowed anti-Semite. Does this have any room in your movement, in the MAGA movement?
Of course it doesn't have any room in the MAGA movement, and of course...
You disavow him at this.
And of course Donald Trump has criticized this person. Look, I think the guy's a total loser. Certainly I disavow him. That fragmentation is being caused purposefully by a splinter faction of people led by a young man named Nick Fuentes. They're white supremacists, they hate women, Jews, Hindus, many types of Christians, brown people of a wide variety of backgrounds.
When it is just a fact that Ben Shapiro does a lot of things behind the scenes to stop the rise of Charlie Kirk. It's a fact.
For example, Candace Owens. I think that what Candace Owens is doing right now is evil. It is evil, what she is doing right now. Whoa, you're sounding like, you're giving me like Bill Maher or Rachel Maddow. What is this? I thought Shapiro was against SJWs. Now he sounds like one of them. And while Nick is vowing to go against Vance and MAGA in 2028, his newest target is Officer Tatum, who's been getting his Negro wake-up call from MAGA a lot lately. There's this guy called Officer Tatum, a.k.a. Officer Talmud. You should watch his 30 Minutes Crash to Nick Fuentes ex Tucker Carlson interview. Low in his comments are filled with Zions who despise you. Why would I? He's an idiot. Hey man, shit. Hey man, Tucker, them some. Hey man, he's a idiot. Brandon Tatum is a.
Hey, before I started really getting into this content space and all that, I didn't even know who Nick Fuentes was. Even up until like not so far in the distant past. The first time I really heard his name that I paid attention was when, I think y'all remember when the CEO was shot right in New York, when that whole thing happened. And if I'm not mistaken, right after that, somebody showed up at his door, and he was online talking about how somebody showed up, and it was on his camera, and he waiting for him to come to answer his door. I still didn't really know who he was, so I'm just like to myself, I'm like, damn, that's crazy, right? Look, I ain't know, man. Like, that's crazy, man. Somebody, showed up to his house and shit, ready to take him out. Now I see why. And I'm not advocating for violence done like that here on the U of the tubes. Now I see why. I'll just say that.
An idiot. Dumbest person I've ever heard. He should get an education. Officer Tatum should get an education. He should learn how to fucking read. MAGA has always been a racist code built around Trump. That racism is just a lot louder and more out front now that Nick Fuentes is becoming the new face of conservative politics. It was better for them too, number one, but number two, who cares? Who cares? You know, enough with the Jim Crow stuff. Who cares? Oh, and to drink out of a different water fountain. Big fucking deal. Oh no, they had to go to a different school. Their water fountain in that famous picture was worse. Who cares? Grow up, drink out of the fucking water fountain. It's just water, it's the same. You know, and, you know, even if it was bad, who cares? Who cares? It's better. It's better in general. We all agree it's better for them. It's better for us. The reason that we talk about this, by the way, I know a lot of black people see this and they go, man, why are you always talking about black people, this and that? Because there just needs to be some shame here. Well, there's a few reasons. First, white people are every single bit justified in being racist. Every single bit justified, to the extent that that means going out of your way to avoid black people when.
So, will black people be every single bit justified in being racist as well? Seeing how we was the ones dragged off of our homeland, subjugated for 400 some years, still oppressed up until this day, still dealing with people like this? Would we be justified in taking the same position and advocating for the same things? Would we be justified in using force to meet force? Would we be justified? I know my answer is.
You see, and once again, remember who is responsible for it all. The Jews.
Which makes it really interesting for any black conservatives still claiming MAGA and how they justify it. Like these Cartier family goofballs. They have been 100% grifting off that MAGA clout and bag. But after watching Nick Fuentes crash out against another...
Hey, and wasn't there 5 of them? What happened to the other ones? It was like 4 or 5 of them, right? I can't remember. But I have noticed it's only been like 3 of them lately. Maybe one of them got tired of the bullshit, but now I like his lead up into this. Even though it's brief and it's a summary, but it shows you what these guys are supporting. Now, as a black man or a woman or a person of color, period, to in any way, shape, form, or fashion try to support this or the side of who supports this type of rhetoric, who doesn't staunchly stand against it, you're a fucking sellout. This just period, point blank, is as simple as that. There's no other way to put it, man.
Black MAGA influencer, it's very clear that everything he's saying about Officer Tatum and black people also applies to them. And you see them struggling in real time, trying to reconcile how they're any different than Officer Tatum and argue about Nick Fuentes being racist or not racist, even though he's a self-admitted racist. And then they try to justify why him being racist is okay.
Just keeping it 100, he might be racist. I'm not saying I'm like upset by it or I'm offended by it.
Come on, bro. Come on, bro. Come on, bro. Now this dude sitting here on the right with the braids, he looking like he ain't trying to hear it, but I think he's with them on this. How could you let a statement like that come out of your mouth? Now, if you was ignorant of who he was and spoke before you knew, one might say, but you just heard what the man said.
I'm just saying, he might be. And he can be that if he want to be. I don't care. What is that going to do to me?
I don't dislike Nick Fuentes.
No, that didn't make me dislike him.
He did work with Kanye.
Man, fuck that. Listen, make no mistake about it. Anybody that's racist or hold those type of views, fuck them. Not only do I not like them, I'll even take it a step further, but I'm not right now. Ain't no sympathy for that shit, man. Don't these people realize you are advocating for terrorists? Period, point blank. That's what you're advocating for. For people who are doing any and everything they can to not only work against you and your own family, but destroy anything that you would consider to be the American dream or any of that. They don't want you to have none of that shit for real.
A peace plan for Gaza.
Shout out to that brother. Yeah, you know, it's just that some people in this world, man, you know, it may be because of young guys. I mean, I'm not excusing that their ignorance, but sometimes you can be in the midst of things and not even really be tuned in and really pay attention. And I know I'm not making an excuse for the Carter family, but some things in time, when they get to my age, they got to sit back and reflect. God live long enough and think about what they're doing now and what they're going to think about down the road. Because, even though we don't want to think of another human being like that, but there's some people who are just plain evil. Just some people are just plain wicked, and maybe they come from a family that maybe God told them that every mama, grandma told us that all people are the same, and likely so. And what our parents said was right. But the people who opposed us based on ethnic, skin, and everything else, they didn't quite see it that way, And some people, logically, they can never understand that. There was a time, when I was young, I didn't understand why we have separate things. I was going through something, didn't understand the grasp of racism that I do now and how deep wounded. And I found out myself, and I had to really correct my mindset of thinking, is that even though you don't want to be offensive to black people, you don't want to be offensive to white people, you don't want to be offensive to your own people, but sometimes these people, and you just think that we want people to get along, and that's go across the board, all races and classes and color. But as you get older, you realize people don't see life the same way you do. And I had to let go of a friend like that recently, who had, not that, I'm not going to make it because of his skin color, it's just because his mentality, his self-centeredness, was everything centered around his likeness, And I had to really question myself, why? I said, really, other than the obvious, we come from two different backgrounds, But, and I said, well, maybe, and I had to really, is I'm getting away because I'm dropping because of his skin color? No, it's just, it wasn't his skin color. That was the least of things. It was the fact that his mindset is self-centered. And even though, like the one brother said that he did a couple of kind things for me, but there was times I had to sit down and question. Like, for example, when I went over his dad's house one time and the people's house, even though it wasn't in their spirit to be like that, but the people that come around them, which is a predominantly white neighborhood, when you've been around white people around, you will pick up certain things that they do. The ones that don't like you, the ones that being kind of nice to, like, oh, you have a black person here. They carry a certain demeanor about themselves. And maybe some of the people who you being friends who happen to be white, they won't catch it. But the ones around them, and I tell you about the story about his brother-in-law told me one time when I wasn't over there, but his brother-in-law married to his sister, and how the neighbor came over. And it got to a conversation about Muslims, and then he didn't directly, it started with religion. Then I guess some person that they came across was a black Muslim, and he made this scenario. And I said, oh, and I didn't think about this neighbor. He called Fred, lived down the street. The guy's passed away. So I didn't think much about it. I knew something, because his sister, they would go down the street to go swimming. They said, come on, James, let's go down there. And yeah, James, you got some sugar. Yeah, let's go on down there. But he claimed to be a Christian man. He got Catholic statues on whatever. But Fred was that prejudice. And I said, and for some reason, I never got in that pool. And I know it's by the grace of God, don't get in that pool. And I just come back down, and I know, he's being nice because of them. But he really don't want me there. See, sometimes they could put on a face in front of you, but they really don't. Maybe the white people, you like it, but you will never notice. So what they do, they code switch. They say something. And there was another incident one time where this was after a homegoing. and it was his relatives that have never been around black people had to kind of he was so a direct code switch, but direct, like starting off a conversation. And me and my friend Pauline, I might have mentioned a story that we went over to his, at the time, because his step grandmother passed away, and I brought this up to Brandon, his brother-in-law, because his brother-in-law, we sitting around having dinner, and his conscience bothered him. Just tell him, I can't stand people like that. I'm like that. And then he went to, and Brandon expressed what he didn't like about Fred. And so I told Brandon, when he wasn't there, when Molly's grandmother passed away, that what these people who knew them said about lazy black people and lazy white people, that he thinks he's a really intelligent guy, whatever. And it was direct and indirect. And my friend was there, my friend Pauline, who's black, she was there. And she was like, kind of taken back. We got back in that car, and she was really upset. And I was kind of shocked. And I'm trying to say, Pauline, I'm trying to clear my head. No, I don't think these people are like this. But the thing about his dad didn't say anything and stopped it. And ever since then, this is something, and this been throughout my life. This is why this ain't just the first time. This ain't the first go around being around. Particularly, you try to look for good in people, that you hope that you don't see that in people. But some people can't help because their background tells you who they are. They never really been around other people of color. They come from, in fact, where they grew up with is predominantly white. Galena, Ohio is predominantly white. And so I know that when a father moved, and they moved towards the part of Columbus, they got more of a adverse of people. So I can only imagine what their life is. It's probably a few other people out there, but it's not too many of us. We're like the scenery, if you know what I'm talking about. We there, but we're like, until you come into our perimeter, you're just that scenery. That's just the way some people like that are, that have that mindset is. And so, when I was young like that, I just, just kind of tune out to, they do nice things like, I've never really been around black people before. And they make it obvious. They don't have to be, like the brother said, young brother said, they don't have to be direct. They could be indirect with you. And so, and I continue to see, and that's just me, that's never been in me to look at someone's color. That's never been in me. But it's like, and same way I thought, because he always said, well, then to come back to that conversation about, Bob's father's neighbor, Fred, he tried to, we're driving the car one day, he said, well, James, Fred was a good man. He was a Christian man. I'm just sitting there listening, right? I'm just listening. I know I should have said something right then and there. And I just listen. And I said, okay, that's your opinion, but that's not taking the fact what your brother-in-law said about your neighbor, But he just believed, because I think he spent time. And then add insult to injury, y'all. This man had a nerve. I should have known right then and there. He likes model planes, right? The kind. He told me he went and got an airplane and put a model plane on his neighbor. The man that he found so good. I should, right then and there, I was like shocked. But this last time, bruh, what happened was asking to help. I show you on my video my car door. He's supposed to help me with my car door. He made a situation like, yeah, I'm gonna come down and help you, and yeah, but James, the car is getting old, blah blah. I understand it's an older car, but the fact is that I ask you as a friend to help me with my car, and I let it go, and I said, well, maybe he don't have the tool, but this last time I went with this road trip down to Cincinnati, you know, and every time I would go around him and his sister, he likes to bring his sister once in a while. You know, everything, you know, his sister does, you know, it's like he just don't, it was me and him, it was just that, it was like guys hanging out, men going to car shows, going to airplanes. All of a sudden, he geared toward Cedar Point. Everything is like Cedar Point, Kings Island. And it's like, man, so that was one of the real reasons why I cut away from him. Like I said, and one day I was just sitting there like, James, what do you have? Because I'm not really into no amusement park. I'm 57 years old. I don't need, I mean, it'd be different if I had, like, if I'm going up there with a woman with some children. But come on, man, we grown, man. I mean, who wants to ride? Some people in their 50s ride going to an amusement park all the freaking time. I mean, it wouldn't be so bad, but it's just that I had to get away. So I had recently, I just said, hey, after his father passed, not too long, I said I had to cut it off. And, you know, and I guess maybe I had to do some self-evaluation, like, do you really need someone's friendship that much? No. Do you need to be in a company somewhere that much? And maybe, because at the time, it was a time when I was going over there, because it was like I was going through a lot of things at my apartment complex. It was just good to get out the neighborhood, go over to someplace just to get away from crazy people. And like I said, the family is wonderful. It's just those extended people. But what really did it, and it still comes back to this day, what he did with his neighborly, with his brother-in-law told him the guy is racist. But he tried to cover up, saying he's a good Christian. And so, hey, you know, sometimes you gotta let them people go. You know, if you're a person that, and I've been through it in times past, and I come across the wrong people. You know, and I mean, you can see some, it could be anybody, it could be people that look like you're black. But when it's white people, it's the signs. You see something isn't right. You know, it's clear as day. And sometimes we don't want to think that way. We love God's children, even though I believe we are God's children. But some people don't and care to think that way. And I don't know if they can't help it or just that they don't realize that they're doing it. Because is we a friend? Is you my friend? Or do I see you see me as your black friend? That's the difference. But anyway, that's just, so I'm not saying that all white people are like that. No, not. You have to, but you really, when you get around any people, regardless of, let's not just be black and white, any group of people. I don't care if they're Hispanic, Asian, whatever, African, whatever. Make sure you see the heart before you call somebody your friend. That's the message of this video. Take care, be blessed. See you on the next video.